Our next speaker is Dr. Bano Murtuja. She is a researcher and the managing director of Seekers Hub. She's originally from Britain. She is from Blackburn. She holds a PhD in social and public policy. She is a very effective shaker and mover behind many of the scenes in the world of Islamic scholarship, and has very big plans for the Muslim community here in Toronto. So without any further ado, let's please welcome Dr. Bano Murtuja.
I begin in the name of Allah, exalted be He, the compassionate and the merciful. And I ask Allah to send infinite blessings upon His chosen one, the messenger of mercy to all of creation for all of time. As far as my plans for the Muslim community of Toronto go, ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. I was asked to address 4 different points here today when I came to speak to you. In all honesty, when I was asked to speak today, I kind of felt that, well, surely you should get a Canadian to come and tell you stuff, but it's really good being a Brit talking to Canadians, because I can say pretty much anything I like, pretend whatever I like about my community, and get away with it. But I'll try to be honest. I was asked to address 4 different points today. Everyday means of gaining blessings in this life and in the hereafter. Engaging with community activism effectively. Modesty and religion in dress, and dealing with non-Muslims who misinterpret Islamic values and question Muslims as extremists. Pretty divergent questions and divergent issues, but my answer to all of them, when I sat down and thought about it, was the same. Intention and action. And so I'm going to go through each of those points, and I'm going to show how our intentions, well, inshallah, I'm going to show how our intentions and our actions need to be straight, and how we can go about making them so in order to achieve that, in order to fulfill the trust that we have been given, the trust of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. But both intention and action require knowledge. To have the highest of intention, one needs to have the right kinds of knowledge. One needs to know which intentions it is that we should have, what it is that we should be striving towards, what it is that we should be reaching towards. And in order to ensure that our actions are what they should be, one needs to be in the state of service to others. And what that means is one's actions should go beyond oneself. So how do we make every day a means of gaining blessings in this life and in the hereafter? This world, as Dr. Quick so eloquently told us, is ultimately a trade. It's a trade-off. And it's a trade-off that we really shouldn't become bankrupt through. What you are actually trading in this world is that you're buying the next life with the deeds that you do. Which is why scholars have described this world as the place where we gather the seeds for the gardens of the next life. But the thing is, the next world is where we harvest the plants. That's our capital. And when you trade, you don't just want to get your capital back. You want to make a profit. And so, it's not simply about doing that which is obligatory upon us. We have that which is an obligation to us. We get up, we pray 5 times a day, and we sit back down again. Most of us will brush it off and think, okay, job's done, let's switch the telly on, surf the internet, chat to my mates, you know. But effectively what you're doing by making your daily actions of that nature, of purely the obligatory, is only getting back your capital. What you put in, what you get out. But there's no profit. So the plants that you get in the hereafter are not your profit. Lord knows I'm a very, very poor student of knowledge. But the one text that I've studied with a number of teachers that for me has answered this question in the most comprehensive of ways is Imam Ghazali's Bidayat al-Hidayah. the beginning of guidance, a course that's actually being taught by Sheikh Faraz at Seekers Hub at the moment. Imam Ghazali goes through from the act of waking up to cleaning your teeth, to every step of the wudu, to stepping in and out of your house, to earning a living, to making friends, to the way you behave with each individual, to the way you interact with your family. He goes through each and every single one of our daily acts that you can imagine and shows how you stop that becoming just your capital and start it becoming profit. How do you make friends and make a profit from that friendship? And I'm talking a spiritual profit here, I'm not talking making money from your friends. Unless you have rich friends. In which case, try it out. You never know. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take wudu as an example. An example of how you can go from simply the act of wudu, the obligatory act of wudu, to using your intentions to make that so much more. To make each and every single step of it so much more. And then I'm going to ask you to apply that principle to the rest of the acts of your life. The more you prepare for an act, the more success you will have in it. And so the more you prepare for the prayer that you have, the prayer that you're about to make, the more success you will have in it. The reality is, did your face really get dirty whilst you were sat here in between Asr and Maghrib listening to some Brit talk to you? Probably not. But if you've broken your wudu, before you pray Maghrib, you will have to go and make your wudu again. So really is the act of wudu the simple act of washing your face, washing your hands, washing your arms, washing your feet, wiping over your head? No, it goes beyond that. And yet that is exactly how most of us treat those acts. That is exactly how most of us treat the every single day acts that we do. It is simply a matter of rote. And yet, Imam Shafi, one of the foremost scholars of the Muslim world, was described after his funeral by one of his teachers as the man who perfected wudu. When he was asked, when she was a lady, and Imam Shafi's funeral, as it was traveling through the streets of Cairo, he had put in his will, I want to stop, and you have to take my body to her. And so her door was knocked upon, and Sayyidatuna Nafisa came out, and when she opened the door, she made dua, she closed the door. A stranger who didn't actually know who Imam Shafi'i was, who was visiting at the time, and who had come to look for Imam Shafi'i, asked Sayyidatuna Nafisa, who is that man whose funeral procession is being led through the streets of Cairo, and your door was knocked on? And all she said was he was a man who perfected his wudu. That was it. Because that was the station of what it is to put the correct intentions behind every single one of your actions. So when we wash our hands in wudu, we make intention that, Ya Allah, as I wash my right hand, please make sure that anything that I reach towards is good. As I wash my left, please ensure that anything that I reach towards will not harm me and will not harm the ummah. These were the prophetic du'as as each and every single limb was washed. As the face was washed, it was, Ya Allah, make my face that face which lights the way, which shines with nur on the day of judgment, which gives light to all of those who follow behind. So, and all of a sudden, now the water that goes over your face is not simply water that's washing off pretend dirt that you don't really have because you've just been sat in a lecture hall. But all of a sudden, it's water that you're asking Allah to make a means of purifying the inside as well as the outside of your physical being. And this is what intention should do to every single one of your actions. Good intention attached to every single one of your actions should purify the inside of your action. And if you purify the inside of your action, the outside of it becomes that much better. Alright. I'm not going to go through the rest of it. I realize that we're at 6:30, and I realise that we will end up needing to stop for Maghrib, so I'll go past and I'll move on to engaging with community activism effectively. And again, the only thing I can come back down to is intention. If you want to engage with community activism effectively, you should be in service. Every single one of your actions should be about serving other people. One of my teachers, an incredible man from today, told us a story once about a righteous scholar who was very well respected in his community. And he was out to go and teach a dars. And his wife said to him, "You know, I'm the one that really teaches, right?" And she's like, "No, you're not. Like, okay, you may cook, and you may clean, and you may do all of that stuff, but you're not really the one who goes out and teaches. Because I'm the one with the knowledge, I'm the one that's studied all of these years, I'm the one that's worked hard, and read all of these books, and I go and people ask me all these questions." And she thought, alright, fine. Gentleman, woman scorned. So she decided that she needed to convince him that she truly was the teacher. So as he's going out to deliver his Eid khutbah, she says to him, "We're out of flour." And he's like, "What do you mean we're out of flour?" She's like, "We're out of flour." He's like, "Why didn't you tell me we were out of flour before? I'm going out for Eid khutbah. As soon as I come back, all of these guests will have arrived at the house, and what am I going to do with guests? I don't have any flour, I can't cook." "You have to remember to bring the flour." So he's like thinking, okay, alright. And she's like, "No, don't forget to bring the flour." "Okay, alright, I'll remember." No, just don't forget. Eat the water, but don't forget to bring the flour." "Okay, I won't forget to bring the flour." So off he goes to deliver his Eid khutbah. On the way going, "Don't forget to bring the flour, don't forget to bring the flour, don't forget to bring the flour." And during his Eid khutbah, mentions the need to bring flour 3 times. So he comes home and he's like, "God, you really embarrassed me today." And she's like, "Why did I embarrass you?" "I mentioned the need to bring flour 3 times." She said, "Don't worry, we have flour. I made all the food. The guests are sorted." And he's like, "Well, why did you say?" "Because I told you I was the teacher." The one who serves those who study are the ones who make that study possible. The ones who serve those who teach are the ones who make that teaching possible. So when you're in service to other people, you not only give success to your own time, but you take a part of their success too. And you recognize that whatever accolade anybody gets in this world comes from the Almighty anyways. You don't need to be at the forefront. You don't need to be the one that gets the recognition. And if you do, all the better for it. But you're not the one that has to be the one that does the stuff. You could just be the one that's in service to them. And that's enough. And in fact, when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was asked about those who travelled to Allah, he said that those who were in service surpassed those who were in study in terms of the station that they had. Because it was those who were in service that made those who were teaching, who were studying, possible. So, the first thing, be in service. Now, but you also have to recognize often, and this is something that Sheikh Osama Khan taught us in an incredible fashion, is that if you want to engage effectively with community activism, you have to put your judgments aside. You have to deal with people where they are at, not where you want them to be. And sometimes, the holier than thou attitude is particularly problematic when it comes to working with people where they are at, not where they want to be, not where you want them to be. So often you will work with people who are vulnerable. Many, many times you will work with people who don't abide by the same laws that you think that they should, who aren't as moral as you expect them to be, who don't behave the way you want them to behave, whose vocabulary seems to include more four-letter words than anything else. The whole shebang. Many of the people that I worked with in the UK had either serious domestic violence issues, whether they were as perpetrators or as victims, or had a number of these substance misuse issues. And it's really difficult, and bearing in mind that some of the people that I worked with were the age of 7 upwards, it's very difficult when a 7-year-old comes up to you and talks to you about drugs that are being delivered around their playground. And you want to go and knock somebody's block off, especially when you know the person who's delivering drugs to them. But the reality is that if I had done that and told the person who I knew was the one that was dealing those drugs that I was going to knock his block off, he wouldn't have come into my centre the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that, and eventually given up what he was doing to become the youth worker that he is today. That is absolutely not me that did that. That is completely him that did it. But something that Sheikh Osama Khan said to us, and something that each and every single one of you, if you go into activism, and if you work with vulnerable people, needs to take to heart, is when somebody who's vulnerable comes to you and asks you for help, say, I love you. Make your actions a reflection of the mercy of the beloved of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Do not say I love you if. Do not say I love you when. Do not say I love you but. Just, I love you. I accept you the way you are. And I extend the mercy of the beloved of Allah to you as you are, where you are. Because the Prophet of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, didn't expect people to change before they came to him. The Prophet of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, made sure that, gave people the space to come to him as they were. And it was in his companionship that they changed. It was in watching him that they changed. It was in loving him and being the recipients of his love and his mercy that they changed. And so if you go into activism and you are going, and if you are helping those sorts of people, then that's exactly the attitude that you need to have, inshallah. Now, as Dr. Crick also mentioned, the question of whether you take that 6-figure salary over the as yet unfunded but great cause, not for profit. That 6-figure salary looks really tempting, but surely you must be a better person if you go for the starting company, not for profit, right? You can always give me the 6-figure salary. I'm good with that. In almost all cases, the issue is not the job that you do, but how you do it, and the intention that you have behind doing it. Almost any profession you can think of can be used to try to make the world a better place, to do good for those around you. And if in and of itself it can't, the skills, resources and money that is raised via it can be a means to do exactly that. So, as a community that recognises the success we have and the position we find ourselves is not of our own making, but part of a much bigger plan, and the plan of one whose knowledge and generosity we can't even comprehend, we accept the place that Allah puts us in, and we make intention to use that position for the good of others. And in the way of Allah, following the teachings and practices of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. The only time that should stop is at the point in which the job that we're doing, the actions that we're taking, are contrary to the Islamic prescripts and contrary to the ethics and the teachings of the beloved of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him. So have the right intentions, follow the ethics and teachings of the beloved, and strive for the pleasure of Allah in all that you do, and you can't go wrong. But what you do need to make sure, when you're doing all of them, is that you have the knowledge that is required to know which steps you should be taking. And so you have to make the intention and take the action to gain the requisite knowledge, sacred knowledge that is required. Many of us expect ourselves to follow the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, but have very little idea who he is, have very little idea of his parents, of his lineage, of his wives, of his children, of the life that he led, of what he liked and what he disliked. And so it's very difficult then, not only to love a man who we don't know, but to follow the ethics. And so you'll often hear people kind of go, I don't believe the Prophet could ever have done that. Okay, fine. But that's not where you should be at. You should know that the Prophet didn't do that, because you should already have studied him. You should already know him enough to know that he would. You don't need to do it. Well, 1 + 1 must equal 2 in this situation, right? Okay, because that will take me on to how we deal with those people who question Islam as the 4th point. Modesty in religion and dress. I'm not going to take too much time on this, because this is something that I literally could speak about for the next 3 hours. And I start to like the sound of my own voice far too much when I do it, so I'm not going to try too much. What I am going to give you is a story of a very arrogant, pretentious young teenager, and I'm not saying it's me at all, who decided that the first time she went on Umrah, she knew God enough to know that God knew her as much in England as he knew her in Makkah. And so she'd go dressed exactly as the way she went in England to Makkah. Why not? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not cheating God, right? And one of the things that trip made me realize is the way in which you dress, very much like the language that you speak, is as much about the people you're talking to and the people that you are with as it is about what you are saying and the way you are dressing. Because when I came to Canada, many innocent words that I use in the English language, I'm no longer allowed to use because you guys put weird meanings to certain words. So I keep being like, you can't say that here. Why can't I say that here? It just means, no, it doesn't. In Canada it means this. And I sit there thinking, seriously? Like, what? It just means the child's been bad. No, it does not. Because the cultural context in which you're in translates the words that you use in a particular way. In the same way the cultural context that you are in translates the clothing that you wear in a particular way. So a shalwar kameez may work just fine at home in England, sat with your mum and dad. But when you're walking in the haram and you have people who are trying to make umrah, who struggle with lowering their gaze, or lower their gaze but don't want to have to lower their gaze at the haram, because actually what they're seeing is more than that they were used to. There is an issue. So you have your basic precepts. You have the requirements on both women and men that Islam puts on, but those are just your capital. If you want to profit, then you profit by ensuring that your modesty goes one step beyond that which you are purely required to do. John Stuart Mill, the founding philosophical father of libertarianism, believed that one should be at liberty up to and until one's actions impacted upon others. It's interesting to see a society that claims to uphold John Stuart Mill as much as Western societies claim to uphold him, deny the fact that your liberty is only up to the point at which it starts to affect others. If your clothing begins to affect the way in which other people perceive you and perceive your faith, then you need to reflect on that just a little bit more than we actually do. Now, we should dress with alongside the basic requirements of modesty and the required coverings in Islam, we should dress with the dignity that is befitting of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. A modesty that does not cause those who seek to be modest to shy away from us. And an openness to the society that we live in that reflects the love, mercy, and welcoming character of the best of creation. So core to what we wear is the intention with which we wear it. Now, many people have used this as an argument. Ironically, many people in circles I used to move in used to use this as an argument against the niqab. So you're in a cultural context where women don't wear the niqab, and therefore we should stop. We shouldn't have to wear it. We shouldn't, it's not a requirement. I don't wear the niqab. I have never worn the niqab, other than in protest. The first picture my husband ever saw of me before we were married was me looking very, very scary in a completely makeshift niqab in a protest outside Jack Straw's office, a local MP that started this whole niqab debate in Europe to begin with. Delivering a speech, hands up, looking particularly angry, so all you could see is my eyes all covered in black. And the socialist worker kind of went, Dr. Bano Murtuja tells Jack Straw how it is, or something equally. But I will defend the right of any woman in the West or in the East to wear the niqab until my dying breath, inshallah. Why? Because most of the women that I know who wear the niqab, and some of those women are the most influential women in my life, wear the niqab as a spiritual connection to Allah. They put it on, and through it they feel more spiritually connected. At what point who am I to tell them to take it off? The hijab for many women also reflects that spiritual connection to the divine. For some men, the beard does. For others, the thorn. For some, the shamar kameez. So the cultural context in which you're in does not mean that you let go of that which is the most important. The intention with which you wear the clothing that you wear. Ensuring, though, that at the end of the day, the prescripts of Islam are adhered to. But remember, I don't love you but, I don't love you if, I don't love you when, I just love you. You take people as they are, and you are not judge, jury, or executioner to anyone. The reality is that somebody who doesn't follow any of the prescripts may be far closer to their Lord than I could ever imagine to be. And finally, how do you deal with non-Muslims who misinterpret Islamic values and question Muslims and extremists? Dr. Quick already answered this, so I'm not sure I really want to. But I will say a little bit about what Habib Ali al-Jifri, may Allah be pleased with him, said when he came to, may Allah preserve him, said when he came to the UK. When he was guiding us following the attacks on Gaza. And what he said was, when we protest when we see something that's wrong, but we never overstep the boundary. We never go beyond the boundaries that were laid down for us by the example of the perfect of creation, peace and blessings be upon him. The beloved of Allah had many, many, many enemies. Of those enemies, Abu Jahl, until he took his Islam, Abu Sufyan, regardless of how much enmity they had for the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and they did, they were never able to question his character. They never did. In fact, often they would testify to how amazing his character was. And so you look to the stories that you see. You look to when the Muslims went to Abyssinia, and they're asked by the Negus to tell them about, and the non-Muslims are asked by the Negus to tell them about the character of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And the non-Muslims were not able to say anything about his character that was even in the slightest bit negative. Why is that? Because we were given boundaries. We were told, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, tells us that I came but to perfect noble character. That was his mission here. You can have your capital. You can do that which you want, which you're obliged to do. Pray 5 times a day. Keep your fasts. Give your zakat. Go on Hajj. But what makes you the best person you can possibly be is perfecting your noble character that goes alongside all of those things. Following the ethics and the character of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And there's a reason why those people who stood as companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, those people of war, and they were people of war, were not allowed to raise a single sword to defend themselves despite torture, despite murders, for years whilst they were in Makkah. I have a lovely story about Sayyidina Ali, and then I'll stop. So, this is just to give you an example of who Sayyidina Ali was. So Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu Wajhu, the son-in-law of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, when his first son was born, took him to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. You had a son. And the Prophet was ecstatic. He said, what are you going to call him? I'm going to call him Har, which means war. I'm going to call him War. The Prophet was like, no, don't call him. Call him something that's beautiful. So he was given the name Beauty. And then the next child was born. He had a son. What are you going to call him? I'm going to call him Har. I'm going to call him War. No, don't call him. Call him the Little Beautiful. And so the name that he was given was the Little Beautiful. These were people of war. That very same man, Sayyidina Ali, this man of war, after the passing of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was fighting the Khawarij, and he was in a duel, and this duel had lasted for hours. And in this duel, eventually he managed to unsword the person that he was fighting. And as he took his sword to take the final blow, the man spat in his face. When he spat in his face, Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu Wajhu, took his sword, sheathed it, turned around, and walked back to his companions. And his companions were like, are you kidding me? I mean, not literally, because I don't think there's a word for, are you kidding me now? Like, what happened? You had him. It was hours. Like, literally, we just, what? And he said, up until the point he spat in my face, I was fighting him for Allah. The moment he spat in my face, I worried that I would kill him out of anger. I worried that I would kill him out of my nose. And so I put my sword away. How we should be responding to people who speak about Islam in negative terms? With the etiquette and the courtesies that we have been taught by the beloved of Allah. And the only way you're going to know them is by going out and gaining the knowledge. So, the answer to the 4 questions I was given: get the knowledge, make the intention, and be in service. Jazakallah khair.